Hi, good afternoon, Rob.
Good
This is Asan.
afternoon. How are you?
Fine. Thank you. How are you?
Fine. I've just spoken to Fakrul. He's just landed in Birmingham.
Yeah. He
Good.
just informed me earlier. And
Nice.
Dr. Masrur Salekin is also here. Masrur,
Yeah.
can you hear us?
Hello, Dr. Masrur Salekin. Can you hear us? So have we got everybody online? Hassan?
Yes, I think we already got everyone.
Okay, so we'll
Masrur,
start.
can you unmute yourself?
Hi,
Yes. Yeah.
good
Hi.
evening and good afternoon. Am I clearly audible? Rob?
Yes, we
Yes,
can
yes,
hear
clearly
you.
you're audible. Hello, Masrur.
Hi, how are you? Yeah,
Fine,
I
thank
was not allowed by the host to unmute myself, so I had to text Asan to unmute. Allow me to
My
unmute.
apologies.
No worries. It's
you. So,
technology.
I will make a sort of start the slides and then you can deliver your webinar. So we just give it a bit of an introduction to yourself, myself, and the audience, and then it will be over to you. Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Excellent. Okay, we'll start then. So, welcome everybody. This is a suite of webinars that is kindly hosted by Edupro, which provides practitioners, researchers, students, and the like the opportunity to formulate their CPD requirements in regard to sustainability. It is part of the Edupro Green Talent Award program, and so those that are attending are heavily involved in this. Myself, I think those that haven't already met me, I'm a academic, but the bulk of my years, 30 years, have been within industry, predominantly in the mining, construction industries. I'm a civil engineer, turned into finance, and heavily involved in sustainability and involved in sustainability startups, and have ran sustainability-based businesses such as waste management, waste recycling businesses, and been involved in nature-based projects such as creating the Eden Project. So I take a keen interest in this, and it's a passion, and we dedicate our time to share knowledge and expertise. I'm particularly fascinated in this webinar. My involvement in legislation has always been ensuring compliance of the businesses that I operate with the Environmental Agency. That may be regarding to controls of pollution, leachants, surface runoff, visual impacts, restoration plans, noise, dealing with community, all on the basis of environmental impact and looking at ways working with the regulated bodies to ensure that we're in compliance and sometimes setting the standards for new businesses. So this is of real interest to me. Okay, next slide, please. So EduPro at a glance, you can see that we are heavily involved in coming to the end of a Green Talent Award program, which will culminate in the awards at Leeds University, our key sponsor, on November 11th and the 12th. And so this audience that we have on webinars has been the contestants of this, and we've whittled them down through the case studies that you've been given, which are based on such things as the circular economy, waste recycling and minimization, energy, and a host of alignment to where the impacts are worldwide. We've had great engagement from in countries, and we've on these webinars we've sort of hit double digits, but 16 countries came into the original Green Talent Award program. And so we're all sharing ideas, and we are looking at ways that we can provide solutions. Okay, next slide, please. So today, it's the first time that I've met Masrur Salekin, but I've heard a lot about him through Edupro and through Dhaka University. But I'll give you a quick brief of the sort of salient points. Over 20 years experience as a judge, researcher, academic, and legal practitioner. Currently holds a position of the Metropolitan Sessions Judge in Dhaka, and he has also served as a legal counsel in the compliance department at BRAC. He has a PhD, and the title of that PhD and the topic was Judicial Proactivism and Collaborative Constitutionalism. Has very strong ties with various universities, such as the University of Nottingham and the University of Galway, and has been involved heavily in ensuring environmental justice in India, Ireland, and Bangladesh. He was honoured with the prestigious Hardman Research Scholarship and continues to do research supervision, but is unique in as much that he is also involved in the legal judiciary system. He's heavily involved in academic research, and he appears to be extremely practically based and has a passion for environmental justice. So next slide, please. So this is over to Masrur Salekin, and thank you for taking the time out, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you, Edupro, for inviting me for this webinar. And as Rob was saying, I have a very, deep passion for environmental issues and sustainability. And sustainability in the current world is one of the buzzwords. And everyone uses it. Everyone loves to use sustainable development, sustainability. But there are certain issues which are sometimes very confusing. What actually sustainability mean, and what is actually sustainable development, and what is the importance of discussing on these issues, why we should be concerned about sustainability and other issues. Because we have done, and in most of the countries we have been doing development, and development works have been ongoing in several countries, and we have seen what has resulted into environmental degradation in most of the countries. And then back in 1987, this concept of sustainable development comes into play, and then we also started discussing about the relationship between sustainability law, and sustainable development. And then we had the Rio Conference of 1992, where this concept gained more of an importance, because there were principle 3, principle 4 in the Rio Declaration, which are primarily focused on the right to development, the concept of sustainable development. And this is where this webinar is very important, as I see this, because it talks about the leaders, the green leaders, who actually wants to work on the issues of sustainability. So if I can share my screen, Asan, and if you can stop your screen from sharing, then I start.
Yes. Let me stop my sharing, then you can share.
Morris.
Please.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
It will be easier for me, I think, to move away from one slide to another, because I will be, nudging and judging from one place to another place. So, as the title of the conference of the webinar says, what the green leaders should be aware of, and this is where I was saying, this whole webinar is very important, because it talks about sustainability and the importance and the purpose of sustainability law, because balancing economic growth, the environmental protection is one of the toughest thing to do. And when it was first identified, in the 1972, many of you might know that there was one very big conference happened in Stockholm, where basically 114 states sent their representatives, and then they identified that yes, definitely we should start working to protect the environment. But then it also become one challenge, because whenever you are trying to do anything to protect the environment, development activities, development works should be challenged. And this is why like sustainability law is very important, because it can help us to balance between economic growth, environmental protection, and social equity, because the concept of sustainable development requires these three pillars. This is social justice, environmental protection, and economic development are achieved by a single development action. So this is why the things are even more challenging for the developing countries, because the developing countries, they have a resource scarcity. So whenever they are trying to adopt any project, so there are instances where we have seen that they take to the initiatives initially, and then one of the very important thing which should have been done before the start of the project is EIA, which is known as the environmental impact assessment. In most cases, EIA are being done at the end of the projects. Like we have seen in several development projects in Bangladesh, where the government started the project. There were several objections from different bodies of the world, and then the government initiated the EIA at the middle or at the end of the project, like which makes basically no sense, because sustainable development, sustainability, this requires that, I mean, you should consider the issues that whether this particular development project is going to gain you social justice, whether it is going to ensure environmental protection, and how much economic development you actually achieving through this particular development project. So this is where the green leaders should know that what are the rules that they should be aware of, because uh, in international legal perspective, many of you might be from the legal background, so you know that, I mean, when we speak about national laws, it's quite gettable. Okay, these are the laws 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But whenever we discuss about international law, the problem is that in every area of international law, we have a lot of treaties and conventions. Because if we speak about environmental issues, there have been hundreds and thousands of treaties and conventions. Few are bilateral treaties, many are multilateral treaties. Like, for example, we had the Vienna Convention for the Protection of Ozone Layer. We have the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and we have the first treaty that generally we say this was the first treaty regarding environmental protection was the 1867 Early Fisheries Treaty. Definitely, there are many other treaties before that, and there are many other treaties after that. But this is the one which generally we tends to say this was the starting of environmental legal regime. So it's very important for the green leaders that they should know what are the international, national, local regulations that they should be complying with. Because as Rob was saying, like, I mean, compliance is one thing which is very important from the environmental point of view. And then the other issue, which is regarding the documentation and disclosure, because these days it's very important that we do the sustainability reporting. So whether the organizations, the institutions, or the industries, they doing the sustainable reporting or not. This is another thing that has to be seen by the green leaders, and all these things will definitely help to achieve compliance, because we also know that in terms of corporate responsibility, uh, achieving sustainable development, achieving sustainability, and having a good governance system is very important. So as I already discussed about sustainable development, this term was initially identified back in 1987 in the Brundtland Commission's report, and this is the definition which generally we refer that this is the most quoted definition of sustainable development, the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own need. So it almost covers everything which is required for one development to become a sustainable development. It might seem that, okay, this is a very plain kind of definition, a plain kind of thing which says about sustainable development. But if we take each of the wording of this particular definition, it will appear that, I mean, this definition has a very wide scope, because it speaks about the necessity of the present generation as well as the necessities of the future generations to come. And it also includes within itself both intragenerational equity and intergenerational equity, and also the sustainable utilization of natural resources. So from a contextual point of view, this definition is very well scoped and very well organized. Definitely, though, there are criticisms against this concept, and definitely there are criticisms against sustainability and sustainable development, because it has been argued by many developing countries that, I mean, should we be aware of this sustainable development, because we are more concerned about development activities, and if we pay more attention to sustainability, then it might happen that we might lose our development initiatives and we might need more money which we don't have. So this is where there are challenges in achieving sustainable development. But as we see, and as has been the trend in the environmental matters, like, because day by day we are observing there's a huge degradation in the environmental issues, and we are seeing, like, I mean, heat has been increasing in the past 2 or 3 decades. So it's high time that, I mean, we should take actions. And there are like 17 goals that many of you know, which has been identified by the United Nations back in 2015, which should be achieved by 2030. Unfortunately, there are many countries which are yet to be on the race. Like, I mean, so they're still struggling because of poverty, hunger, and various other issues. So these are the 17 goals which were identified by the United Nations and which has been given to the countries to achieve by 2030. And if we just see at the list of sustainable development goals, these are quite exhaustive, I must say, because it starts with no poverty and ends with like partnerships for the goal. So we need to achieve all these goals, because this speaks about zero hunger, good health, even quality education, gender equality, and like access to justice. So everything has been covered in this thing. So these are the goals which all the green leaders should be aware of. And definitely, because of the shortage of time, I'm not going to go in detail of all these 17 goals. But what I would like to discuss more in more detail, this is like, I mean, what are actually infringing the countries to achieve sustainability and sustainable development. So the first thing that we are encountering is the inequitable access to resources. So this is one thing, like, I mean, which has been a problem for almost all the countries. And this is not only about the inter-country or intergenerational problem. This has been a problem within the society itself. Because if we look at most of the countries in the world, we see that most of the wealth are captured by like 4 or 5% of the global citizen, whereas the 95% of the global citizen is struggling to have their, I mean, 3 times food a day. So if we see at the sustainable development goals, like which speaks for food, energy, and water, like SDG 2, 6, and 7. So these are all being violated. These are all being infringed because of inequitable access to resources. So there has been ample reports published of these issues, like the World Bank report of 1970, which is quite an old report. But it says, like, I mean, due to the doubling of the global population, primary energy and food production have more than tripled. So yet billions of people still suffer for food. We also have reports from the UNEP, which is quite recent report of 2021, which says that, I mean, the total population is estimated to rise to 9 billion in 2050. So are we ready for this population, and are we really equipped to feed all this population that has been increasing? So when we speak for sustainable development, so in the developing countries, like, because as I come from a developing country, so when I talk to my people, like, I mean, if I try to convince them that definitely we should try and achieve sustainable development, we should be aware of sustainability and all the legal regulations. So the first question that people generally ask us that, I mean, how we are going to do that, whereas we don't have food, we don't have money to buy our food, even like there are many countries which are struggling for pure drinking water. So if you try and convince those people, like, I mean, that they should follow the sustainability laws, they will be asking you lots of questions, like, I mean, how we can do those things, because we don't have enough resources to achieve those goals. And then One more problem is this environmental crisis. As we all are aware that, environmental crisis has been increasing day by day. And when we talk about environmental issues, one thing that always comes to our discussion is that environmental problems are mostly irreversible. So whatever has done, it cannot be undone. So we had treaties to protect the ozone layer, like the 1985 Vienna Convention for the Protection of Ozone Layer. We had the 1987 Montreal Protocol on substances that deplete the ozone layer. So we could resist the ozone hole to, get more bigger, but we cannot, I mean, like that hole cannot be filled out. When we started taking the initiative regarding climate change issues, so we have been imposing different targets for different countries. But what actually has been achieved by us, the global temperature has been increasing. We have treaties regarding protecting biodiversity. We have treaties regarding endangered species. But did we actually able to achieve those goals? So environmental crisis is something like, which is one of the biggest question marks in achieving the sustainable development goals or sustainability, because ecosystem degradation has been like, quite inevitable in almost all the countries in the world. Like, very few countries can say that, no, we are not facing ecosystem degradation. We don't have environmental problem. Maybe the problem might differ from one country to another country, from one region to another region, but these problems are quite common in almost all the countries. As I was fortunate to do my PhD research and comparing between India, Bangladesh, and Ireland. So these are three different types of countries. India, which is a quite a big country, and Ireland, which is based in the western part of the world, and of course, a developed country, and Bangladesh, which is a low-lying country. So these three different countries, when I was doing my research, I could identify that they have differing environmental issues, but there are a few things in common. That environmental crisis is quite common. Like whenever we talk about the industries, so the industries, either it be in Ireland, or it be in India, or it be in Bangladesh, or it be in the UK, they all are polluting. So either they are using uh, electricity generated from coal burning, or electricity generated from gas or oil burning. So of course, carbon dioxide is being emitted by those electricity producers, and the factories, the industries which are using those electricity, they have a part to play in that particular pollution. And then different vehicles are being used by those industries for carrying goods, for carrying raw materials, for transporting goods from one place to another place. So that is a place where, again, we see the release of carbon dioxide by those industries and factories. And whenever we discussed about the releasing of wastages by those industries, again, this is one of the biggest challenges that all the industries, all the governments in the world are facing, that the industries are mostly polluting the adjacent vicinity. They are either trying to release their pollution in the nearest pond or nearest wetland. And we also have treaties so that the ships are not releasing their wastages in the seas. But if you see the water in most of the seas these days, you will see that, even the seas are polluted. And we have like number of pictures. If you just Google it, like, pollution or global environmental pollution, you will see hundreds, thousands, and millions of pictures being taken by photographers all over the world, which all shows, like, how environmental degradation has happened. And again, one more question that arises here is that, who are the prime cause behind this environmental degradation? Can we point our fingers towards other species living on the earth, or is it we, the humans, who have been polluting the environment mostly? Because if we talk about the industries, if we talk about these vehicles, if we talk about all the things that we have been consuming, these are all causing environmental crisis and problems. And more importantly, we have been producing food in the last 2, 3 decades by using chemical fertilizers. We have been using a lot of pesticides in the agricultural fields, and we have made sure that there are no more pests in the croplands. So this is a violation of the biological diversity. We have made and we have made sure that there are no insects in the crop fields. So if there is no insects, so there will be no frogs to eat those. There will be no birds. And if there is no birds, there is no frogs. There will be no fishes. If there is no fishes in the croplands, then it will be followed by other species. So this is where we have been causing a lot of damage in the global as well as local and regional biological diversity and ecosystem, because we the human being are just a very small part of the whole ecosystem, but the way we act, the way we tends to see things, it means that, I mean, we are everything. But as we all know that, I mean, we are definitely not everything. We are just a very small part of the whole. So if we look at the other side of the whole thing, that, I mean, how environmental degradation has been causing damage, to one more perspective, or the one more concept, is this is violation of gender equality, because it is the women. If we like, I mean, the participants who are from the developing countries, they will gather it for more, I mean, like, better. Like, the women in the developing countries suffer most compared to the men. I'm not saying that the men are not suffering. Of course, both are suffering, because this is a problem. Climatic problems or cyclones or like floods, they are definitely causing damage to the homes, the houses, everything. But the women are the ones who has to suffer most. So this is where, like, I mean, the sustainable development goals, the sustainability has been facing the toughest challenge, because the environmental crisis is one thing which we could not stop at all, and which has been increasing day after day. And these challenges are definitely, as I was saying, like, I mean, quite common in almost all the parts of the world. And of course, the developing countries are the ones who has to suffer most, because if we just think about the global warming, which is definitely going to cause the increase in the sea level, which is going to result in the loss of some part or most part of many countries. Like the small islands, they are going to lose most of their lands, and like countries like Bangladesh, countries like India, they are also going to lose like quite a major part of their land. So this is going to result into several problems. Like, I mean, this is not only about environmental. This is definitely going to cause their economy, and this is definitely going to result into development issues, political issues, and cultural issues. This is one more thing which definitely comes into our mind. I know, like, many of we might have uh, forgotten the COVID days, but like those who have lost their families, those who have lost their loved ones, close ones, they still bear the pain of what COVID had done to us, and what any pandemic like COVID might do to us again, God forbid. So COVID-19 was something, like, I mean, which definitely affects the SDG project progress, because like many people lost their jobs, and the SDG index was almost half of the world's countries those have registered negative growth. So again, this COVID-19 impact is still prevalent in most of the sectors that we see all over the world. So this has caused extreme poverty, and in many families where the only person who was the earning member, if he or she had died, so this has definitely resulted into more poverty for that particular family. And deforestation, poaching, overfishing, all these things have been decreasing the ecosystem. They have been violating the biodiversity, and definitely has a, I mean, grave impact on sustainability and sustainable development. So this is where we need to think about a systematic framework for promoting the achievement of SDGs, and for ensuring sustainability. we need to think out of the box sometimes, because there are issues like, as I was mentioning about the COVID-19 pandemic, which definitely we were not at all prepared for any such pandemic. So we need to think ahead of time. We need to make plans. We need to classify like what are the top priorities that we should work first. Because if we talk from the point of view of the developing countries who definitely don't have the enough resources for achieving all the SDG goals, maybe they have to make a list of the priorities. Like, as in our daily lives, we also make list of priorities, like what to do and first, and then the next thing comes next. So we need to classify the green leaders. They should help the policymakers. They should help the global leaders to classify what are the top priority goals that we may try and achieve first. And then definitely we need to have some sort of coordination, because the Stockholm Declaration, the Rio Declaration, and all the treaties, even the UDHR of 1948, all talks about coordination. Coordination amongst the countries, coordination within the countries, coordination in the region, coordination between the countries and the international organizations, coordination between the organizations and the NGOs. And this sort of coordination is also important from the point of view of the educational institutions, like what, for example, what Edupro is doing today. Like this sort of acts and actions by institutions like Edupro or maybe other institutions, this will help us to coordinate and collaborate. Because nowadays, like without collaboration, without coordination, we cannot achieve the sustainable development goals. We cannot achieve sustainability, because as I was discussing, like the inequitable access to resources, all these issues regarding environmental crisis and any other obstacles that we are facing globally and locally, we need to work in a more coordinated fashion with more collaboration. And this is where I think and I believe that the green leaders might come into play. And to do these things in a better way, we definitely need to have technological cooperation, and science can definitely play a very vital role. And those who have a science background, who are working in the scientific arena, because environmental issues, sustainability, sustainable development goals, these are like very scientific issues. Like generally, like as you have heard my background, like I'm coming from a legal background. So in many cases it happens that environmental issues, problems, I can only understand the legal part of the whole thing. So there is a major science part left in the whole box. So we definitely need to have a collaborative effort by people coming from different perspectives and point of view. Because like someone who is coming from economical background, so he or she might give one kind of solution. Someone coming from political science background, someone coming from background of history, someone coming from background of like marketing management, or someone coming from background of compliance. So all these people will have a different part to play. And technology is the one, like which definitely in the current world can and can definitely help us, the green leaders, to collaborate, to cooperate. Because it was science which first time identified back in 1960s that the global temperature is increasing and we should work first. And it was science which has come up with solutions in different areas. So we have laws, we have scientists working on those things. So now we need to collaborate between this science and law. And at the same time, those who are coming from a science background or who are working in the scientific area, the green leaders, the global leaders, all should, I think, pay more attention to the legal arena, because we have certain wonderful laws in terms of protecting climate, in terms of protecting the environment. Like to begin with, like we have the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. I believe many of you have heard the name of this convention, which is one of the biggest achievements of the Rio conference back in 1992. 176 country representatives participated, and they argued at, I mean, till the very last moment of the conference. And this particular convention was adopted, which was the first of its kind, which talks about climatic changes, and it also requires the states to take some sort of initiative, some sort of action, though in a very vague way. But the states were for the first time made aware that yes, it is we, the human being, who are polluting the environment, who are the principal reason behind climatic changes, and it is we who should take action. And this is the convention which also acknowledges that the responsibility regarding climate change is not equal. In this convention, we also applied the principle of common but differentiated responsibility. The short form is CBDR, which says that the climatic changes that we are facing these days, the developed countries should take more of the burden because they are the ones who have been polluting the environment, who have been releasing carbon dioxide, methane, and other greenhouse gases more compared to the developing countries. And that was one of the biggest success of this particular convention, which could make the developed countries to take the lead. Though unfortunately, we have seen in the next 2 decades that countries like the US, who have always drifted away from their obligations, they signed, they even ratified, but then they have taken out their membership. Like we have seen that what they have done in the Paris Agreement of 2015, where every country, including the developing countries, had to submit a nationally determined contribution, NDC, so that we can achieve the goals set by the Kyoto. So these are the, big names, the big laws in the climate change perspective, which the green leaders should know, because without knowing the legal regime, like what is required by law, what the country should do in order to protect the climate, in order to protect the environment, is very important. That we all should read this convention. We should read the Kyoto Protocol 1997 and go through the Paris Agreement 2000. So, in addition to this climate change convention and the Kyoto Protocol, green leaders should also be aware of the convention on biological diversity. I have been talking about this, the balance in biology, because like ecosystem has been breached. So biological diversity convention was also adopted during the Rio conference, and this is one more very important convention which has got like protocols subsequently adopted, like the Cartagena Protocol on biosafety. We also have to know what actually was required by the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, which was adopted in 1973. So when we discuss about this particular convention, like this convention did not actually restricted all sorts of trade, but it has restricted the trade of species which are endangered. And it has categorized the endangered species into 3 broad categories: Appendix 1, Appendix 2, and Appendix 3. Of course, Appendix 1 includes the species which are most threatened, and then Appendix 2 has included those species which required immediate steps to protect them from being endangered, and Appendix 3 includes species which are not maybe globally threatened, but which are maybe regionally or locally threatened. So these 3 appendixes of the 3 different lists, they have been incorporated in this particular convention, and the countries which are the member states of this particular convention, they are required to protect those particular species, like the Royal Bengal tiger, which is listed as Appendix 1. So definitely that cannot be traded. So it cannot be exported and imported from one country to another country. So there is very interesting system in this particular convention, which is known as the permit system. So if any country wants to export any species which is listed in Appendix 1 or 2, it definitely requires export permit for those species for sending from one country to another country. So then we have this convention on wetlands, which is popularly known as the Ramsar Convention. And it's again very important for lowland countries like Bangladesh or India or many other developing countries, where we have lots of wetlands. And wetlands are not only important in terms of preserving water. Wetlands are very important in terms of biodiversity and protecting the habitats of like thousands of species. So this particular convention is again very important. And then I already discussed about the Vienna Convention for the Protection of Ozone Layer, which was adopted in 1985 and which tried to protect the ozone layer. And it also has one subsequent protocol adopted in 1987, which was also amended several times because as the science has progressed day by day, so there are more gases, those were identified, which are causing damage to the ozone layer. So those gases were incorporated in different parts. And this Montreal Protocol and the Vienna Convention had a very important provision initially adopted in 1990 in the London Amendment, which requires that the developed countries should contribute to build up a fund which can be or which will be used for the developing countries or by the developing countries so that they can adapt and mitigate with this impact of this ozone layer. So this was the very innovative idea which was adopted in this Montreal Protocol through this London Amendment of 1990, because at the time the developed countries had the tendency to bypass their responsibilities. They were saying that why we should pay and why we should be the one who should be paying for the protection of the developing countries. But that particular protocol made sure that the developed countries are contributing for building that particular fund. That particular idea was later adopted by the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and then by the Kyoto Protocol, because nowadays we know that there is a huge green climate fund which has been created under the umbrella of the United Nations Framework Convention on the Kyoto Protocol and the Paris Agreement. Of course, the developing countries now can apply for that particular fund so that they can adopt projects for mitigation and adaptation with the changing climate. So in addition to those, definitely I'm not going to discuss all the conventions and protocols. It might appear to the audience of the participants that how many conventions or protocols or treaties I'm going to discuss. I'm not definitely going to discuss all, but I'm just giving you or trying to give you the idea that there are a lot of conventions and treaties. And if you really want to work, for protecting the climate, for protecting the planet, and for protecting the environment and be a green leader, of course, you definitely have to go through at least the major conventions and the major treaties. Because when we are trying to protect the environment, the first question that you might encounter from the governments, from the industry owners, that why we should do this, why we have to abide by those particular rules, why we should be aware of the environment, why we should protect the environment. The answer is very simple: because this particular convention, this particular treaty imposes a global responsibility. Like there is one more concept. Like, I mean, so few countries might also argue that, I mean, we are not even a member state to that particular treaty. So there again, you may argue on the basis of the principle of customary international law, because most of the environmental law treaties have incorporated issues which have been accepted by a majority of the states in the world. So whereas like where 100 to 120 countries have accepted something, so now even if you are not a party to a particular convention, you may also have to follow that. And like I was mentioning about the Montreal Protocol, which was innovative in building a fund for the developing countries, it was also innovative from the point of view is that Montreal Protocol had a provision, Article 4, which says that even trade of ozone depleting substances between a member state of the protocol and the non-member state was also prohibited. So generally we see that one convention or one treaty or one contract is generally binding upon the signatories. But Montreal Protocol for the first time came up with this particular idea that that was also applicable to non-members as well. So this Basel Convention or the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, these are all very important if we consider the protecting the environment, protecting the biodiversity and ecosystem of the oceans and the seas. Because definitely ocean, sea, these are the, I mean, biggest sources and the biggest resources which we are exploiting and exploring, but we are not protecting those things. So these are the convention which definitely helps or allows the green leaders, which will definitely allow the green leaders to work on, because there are conventions which prevent the marine pollution by dumping wastages. Because I was saying that, I mean, there are ships who have been dumping their wastages. So this London Convention or this Marple Convention, these are all regarding preventing dumping of pollutants, dumping of wastages in here and there. So these are the major conventions. So I'm just giving like the examples of Bangladesh. Like, I mean, I know, like, I mean, I cannot definitely discuss all the countries, as because there are certain participants from Bangladesh. So of course, the same thing might also apply for other countries. So when we say about laws, treaties globally, so all the global treaties, all the global conventions also requires all the member states or the signatory states to adopt laws so that they can implement those global commitments in their country as well. So just as an example, Bangladesh, which is a signatory of most of the environmental global treaties or conventions, it has adopted a number of environmental treaties or like number of environmental acts, in fact. So to start with, we have this Bangladesh Environment Conservation Act. We have the Environment Conservation Rules, Environment Course Act, Biodiversity Act, because Bangladesh is a signatory to the CBD, Convention on Biological Diversity. It also has like acts regarding protecting or safeguarding water as well, or even wetlands, because Bangladesh is also a signatory to Ramsar Convention. So what every green leader can do is that they can check. Just it's very easy if you can Google it. Like, I mean, whether your country is a member state or is a signatory to United Nations Framework Convention or Kyoto Protocol or Paris Agreement or CITES or Ramsar Convention. If you see that yes, your country is a signatory to that particular convention, so then you may look into the list of the countries who have ratified, because many of you know who are or who have a international law background, that in international arena, mere signature does not make a country bound by that particular treaty. You need to ratify that. So if your country have signed and ratified a particular treaty, now it's your turn to see whether your country or whether your government has enacted any law to implement that particular global commitment that it has signed or ratified any particular treaty. So if you find that yes, your country has signed a particular treaty, has ratified that particular treaty, and has also enacted a law for the implementation of that global commitment, now it's easier for you to compel your government. Like we have seen what the young generations can do, like the recent advisory opinion given by the International Court of Justice on climate matters is a very good example that, I mean, what the young people are capable of doing. So this whole advisory opinion was argued, backed, supported by the young people of like several countries. And again, we have seen like hundreds of climate cases being filed by young people, like school kids have been filing cases for protecting the climate. And we have been seeing the good side of that. Like if the government has been taken to the court then is saying that yes, the government has not followed what is being required by law locally. The government has failed to follow what it has committed in the global platform. We have seen in the Agenda case decided by the Dutch Supreme Court finally that it has asked the government to come up with a better climate policy. So we also have examples from Pakistan in the Asghar Lehari case of 2012, where the High Court division said that yes, Pakistan government should come up with a better climatic policy. We have seen in the FIE versus Ireland, where the Irish Supreme Court has also asked the government to have a better climate policy. So this is where like a green leader can come into play for protecting the environment. But it's very important that, I mean, you get to know the global or the international legal regime, the regional one also, and maybe then the domestic or local laws. And in addition to the laws, you might also see that your country has also a lot of policies. Like again, giving the example of Bangladesh, which has policies for environmental matters, which has policies for fisheries policy, national energy policy. So lots of policies. So if we see those policies, and also Bangladesh being a, I mean, one of the biggest uh, problems it will be facing in the next few decades, maybe because of the changing climate. So it also has a lot of climate change laws and policies. Unfortunately, though, Bangladesh not achieve the level of accomplishment it should have, because it has so many laws. I have been showing you that, I mean, Bangladesh has a lot of laws regarding protecting the environment, protecting the biodiversity, and even this disaster management act, or all these plans and policies. But the end result is not that satisfactory, of course, because unfortunately maybe we or the green leaders of Bangladesh could not make it count, or make the government obliged, or maybe, I mean, we need to work harder maybe in the next couple of years, so like 5 to 10 years, so that we can make the government to work harder. We should work harder to make the industry owners, so that they are not causing more pollution to the environment. They are not destroying any more wetlands. They are not destroying the ecosystem of the biodiversity, maybe. So why all these things are important? Because if we just think about this changing climate change is definitely going to result into several problems, not only from the economical point of view, but also, as I was saying, from a cultural point of view, political point of view. There will be resource uncertainty, there will be market uncertainty, there will be regulatory uncertainties. So keeping all those uncertainties in mind, it's very important that all the corporations, all the industries, they should be compliant to the changing climate. So they should adopt policies. They should have, I mean, internal laws or regulations, so that they can uh, make sure that they are not causing more damage to the environment. And this is one more thing that, I mean, I would say, like, I mean, that all the green leaders can or should work into, is that making sure that their country and the industries and all the institutions in the respective countries are submitting sustainability reports. So how much pollution has been caused, and like what raw materials they are using, is there any GMO being used? So whether their industry, whether their country is following the sustainable development parameters, whether they are actually in line to achieve the sustainable development goals by 2030. So these are the issues, like, I mean, which could be identified if we can make sure that there's proper sustainable reports being submitted by the countries. And here the green leaders, I would say, can play a role. And here they may also take the help of this global reporting initiative. So it ensures that, I mean, the local industries and the domestic industries are in compliant with global and local regulations, and definitely it enhances corporate reputation and competitiveness, because compliance is something, as Rob was saying at the very beginning, like, I mean, which is very important. And these days, if you are not compliant, you have to face several challenges, including financial loss, loss of reputation, because compliance is one thing, like, I mean, which can enhance consistency and which can also act as a driver for change. And this is where I think it's very important that, I mean, the green leaders, the industry experts, everyone pay more attention to the changes in the environment, in changes in the climatic system, the laws we have been incorporating, adopting in the global platform, in the regional platform, the bilateral treaties we are having with different countries, and also the local laws, maybe, to see how far we are actually ensuring the protection of the environment. So this is everything I wanted to share. And if you have any question, I would happy to take. And Ahsan, would you please, like Rob, I don't know who is going to moderate this
Yeah,
session.
Hassan will moderate with some questions, but I'd just like to convey my thanks and appreciation of such a you managed to cover such a lot of territory in a very small framework of an hour. So hats off to you. Really interested in that. Well, some little takeaways from me, because like you say, it's a passion. It has to be a passion. And I remember going back in 1997, and we were quarrying in a place called the Brecon Beacons, which is in Wales, a very sensitive green area. And we were going to dewater and cause a problem on the water table because we had to go lower. And one of the things I had to do, I remember being a unit manager, I had to every day we put piezometers on the land surrounding the quarry, and we'd have to measure the water table, and then we'd have to measure the rainwater, all because on a little piece of land we had some wild orchids that we needed to protect. So this shows you the extent that corporates will take to protect the environment, and that was in 1997. And taking away the wetland creation as well. Restoration plans that we have, nature-based solutions, is that we create wetlands. And in my experience of restoring a waterway, Derby-San Diego Canal, I had to have a water vole survey because we were going to disturb the water voles, and then we had to capture the water voles and relocate the water voles. And then there was some intrigue into terms of the offsetting, because we would disturb habitats, and then we would have to offset by creating new habitats, like creating an ancient woodland. So it's all pluses and minuses. But one of the things that I find really intriguing of being like yourself, Masrur, in this for a very, very long time, I find it's about behaviors. We start with behaviors and habits. And if we can start to change the world in habits and behaviors, and that's not just corporations, that's not just governments, that's individuals. because there's an ethics here, there's an ethical code of conduct, and everybody on this call will have a profession. And if you go to your profession, you'll see that there's an ethical code of conduct. And ethics has a thing, there's all different types of ethics, but one of the ethics is the ethics of conventionalism, relativism. And we set the convention, and the convention becomes the norm. And occasionally you'll find yourself, well, I've met the norm, but I know I'm doing wrong. And I've got this ethical dilemma. And so we need to make sure that the conventions that we set are the right ones. And that's just an observation that I wanted to convey, that we have the behaviors, but this needs to go into the ethical codes of conduct, and don't just accept that the conventions and the norms are correct. Sometimes we have to revisit them. What's your sort of take on that? How do we tackle that dilemma, that tension between that? Because a lot of green technology has to be subsidized, and it won't. And we've got this dilemma where we will go for fossil fuels, we will go for the easy economic plus because it's short-termism, and the stock markets require returns, and there's a power and there's a greed and it's money. But a lot of the things that we need to do won't have a financial business case in the short term, and will only sort of start washing their own face in the long term. So there's a lot of tension in here, as far as I see. Well, your phone's not on.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, thank you, Masrur, and thank you, Rob. We have few questions on the chat box, and some of the people already raised their hands. So we will take not more than 5 or 6 questions at this moment because we have time limitation. So Edward asked us, how can the ESG be integrated in the financial industry?
Yeah, so thanks, Arsan. Like I was also following the questions in the chat box. Like, and there was one question which was rightly answered. Like, definitely, I'm going to respond to the question that you raised. But like,
Yeah, okay.
one other participant raised a question that, I mean, is there any difference between green treaties and conventions? So in international law, there are certain terms which are being used like interchangeably. So in few places we say it's a like climate change convention, then we say it's a Kyoto Protocol, then we say it's a Paris Agreement. So there is basically no big difference in all these three instruments. Like, I mean, the Climate Change Convention was a convention, it's in the nature of a treaty. The Kyoto Protocol itself is a treaty, which is in addition to the Climate Change Convention. And then we had the Paris Agreement of 2015. So this agreement, treaty, convention, all are like gives almost the same kind of obligation for the signatory states. And particularly, as I was saying, like, I mean, it's not enough just to sign an international treaty. A country should also ratify that particular treaty to make it binding for itself. So that was one question that I was like following, and that was responded quite rightly by some other participant. And there was one more question that I had, because the question that Asan was asking was at the end of the list. So one other question was that, I mean, as because the US has recently withdrawn from the Paris Agreement on climate change issues. So the question was that, I mean, how the third world can better adjust.
Yeah.
Asan, can you sorry. Yeah, so the question was that, I mean, how the third world can better adjust and address the effect of climate change. So this is, I'd say, definitely a very interesting question, and definitely it might take 2 minutes for me to respond to that. And of course, this is not there is no direct answer to this particular question, because this is not only legal, this includes also politics, economic, trade, and many other things. But there was one argument during the Copenhagen Accord in 2009, and it also was argued during the Berlin Mandate of 1995, that at least the richer developing countries or the industrialized developing countries should also start taking some obligations in terms of reducing in terms of reducing carbon emission. So that, I'm not saying that's a wonderful idea, but that can be one thing, because climatic changes is something like, I mean, it has been also argued that you cannot take the obligation straight away. Like, I mean, if now if we say that, okay, a country like Nigeria, a country like Tanzania, or a country like Sudan has to adopt or take uh, actions so that it can reduce greenhouse gas emission, or a country like Bangladesh and Nepal has to take action so that it can reduce greenhouse gas emissions from 2026, it might be very difficult for us, because then we need to switch to green and clean technology, and we need to adopt certain new technologies so that we stop using our existing fossil fuels. So that's one thing. Like, I mean, I think, like, I mean, again, I mean, many of you might argue with me, but I think like time has come that when most of the industrialized developing countries should start taking some initiative, so that I mean, we can impose more, not only legal but moral obligations on countries like the US, or like, I guess many of you know that China has overtaken the US in terms of uh, global greenhouse gas emissions. But China, being a developing country, it's not taking any responsibility or obligation for reducing the emission of greenhouse gases. So I think like countries like China, Brazil, and India maybe also has to take some initiative so that they should adopt some policies so that they can be obliged to reduce the emission of greenhouse gases. And now let me come to the question that Asan asked me, that I mean, how the environmental, social, governance matters can be integrated in the financial industry. So like ESG does not say that it's only relevant for industries which are working in the environmental area. Like ESG is environmental, social, governance. So financial industry, or be it be a trade industry, or be it be a product producing industry, everyone should start by submitting the sustainability report. So if you like make those industries to follow that, they have to submit a report making sure that they have their environmental licenses, they are not doing something which is I mean, violative of the social justice system, and the governance or the corporate governance is also in line with the moral and legal obligations. So that's how, like any industry, is not only about financial industries, it's about like any industry. Like if it be ready-made garments industry, they also has to follow this environmental social governance parameters, because ESG is something which is applicable to any industry. I mean, whatever it's doing and whatever it's producing. Yeah, Asan, over to you again.
Yes, we have two participants. They already raised their hands. I would like to ask Nana Fifi. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you, Hassan. Thank you, Prof, for great submission in sustainability and law. My name is Nana Fifi Agri from Ghana. My technologies, and I'm also into sustainability. I just started sustainability, that was last year, and my extensive research, I found out that there's some institution that will have really helped guide green leaders or young entrepreneurs going into green economy. And one is the green and sustainability in chemistry or even engineering. And with such institution, it gives you a more generic and informed way to position green leaders in understanding how the green economy works. So from what you've said, I believe that for Africa to be part of this very major ecosystem, we must begin to start from the beginning, which is bringing institutions like the green and sustainability in chemistry, engineering, technology, and even medicine. Because when we don't understand this fundamentals and foundation, it is very difficult for us to be major players around the global system. I have a project I've started with my kids, which is helping them. It's called the Green Habit Literacy Program in kids and teens. Why a lot of Africans waste, or will I say, why we don't turn waste to wealth, is because we have not been wired from a very young age to understand how sustainability works or how we bring value to waste. So my question is, why is it that we don't have institution? My first time of hearing sustainability and law. I know there's policies, there's standardization, but you've given very extensive information on sustainability and law. We don't even have such systems in African countries. So my plea is, why don't we have such institution that will really, really help guide, sustain, and help us improve in the race for sustainability? Thank you.
Thank you, Nana Pipi. And it's so good to hear someone from one of my very favorite countries. And thanks for the question. And like, if I say, like, interestingly, we have certain organizations or institutions which may not be directly working on sustainability matters, but those who are working on helping us, or like people who wants to work in the environmental arena. Like we have the IUCN, like International Union for the Conservation of Nature. So recently they had their global conferences held in Abu Dhabi. So what like institutions like IUCN can do? Like IUCN is a very interesting organization where the states are members as well as different NGOs are also members. So institutions like IUCN, or even if you look at UNEP, the United Nations Environment Program, which has its headquarters in the Nairobi. And when I teach my students, generally all the UN organs have the headquarters in either in New York or in Washington or in Switzerland or in Geneva. So there was a particular reason behind having the headquarters of the UNEP in Nairobi, because Africa, which is the richest continent in terms of like natural resources, unfortunately, because of our greed, I would say our means the greed of the global population, we have been violating the rights. We have been exploiting and exploring the resources Africa has. And I think people like you who are already taking initiatives, you may take the help of institutions like IUCN or UNEP. And one more thing that I guess I missed during my discussion is that sustainability leaders, like there was also a question, like what are the qualifications to be a green leader? So my understanding is that, you only need one qualification, and that is passion for the environment. If you have a passion, you can be a green leader. And we also need to start sharing this information, this knowledge with the school kids, because they are the ones who are actually can be the vanguard of the environment. Because like people like we, who have got to know about the environmental issues, sustainability after we became old. But now it's our turn, I think, that if we start saying or discussing these issues with the school children, who are, of course, in a definitely better position, they have a more passionate heart compared to us. This is my belief. So maybe they can be guided so that they become the protector for the environment. And again, we have institutions, but unfortunately we have not been using the resources those institutions could offer to us, because again, there are many countries who does not want you or me to access those institutions. Maybe I know this is a very political question answer. Yeah, please.
Yeah, can I just come in here? I agree wholeheartedly with what you said. I would classify myself as a green entrepreneur, because I've built businesses and set up businesses in the green agenda. And so my message to the individual who asked the question, it's a real dilemma, because we are trying to embed sustainability into our educational curriculums. But the reality is a very different one. I put on the chat a wonderful podcast called Grounded about a young graduate who decided that they wanted to make an impact and they wanted to use pyrolysis for carbon capture and have it funded through carbon credits, which has has quite a bad publicity. It's a wonderful demonstration of how you can set up a business yourself and make a contribution. But you have to understand a lot of these companies and governments have a dilemma and a tension that their economy, if they went straight into saving the planet today and do things in the right way, it would have dire consequences socially and economically. And as you see, that a lot of innovation comes from small companies and from individuals that want to make a change. And when they see that this is a success, governments and big corporates jump on them and acquire them and bring them in-house. So a lot of the research, a lot of the spin-offs, a lot of the new ventures and the startups are done by risk takers and green risk takers. Now, this is where the change will come along. And as I have said, because of the need for short-term gain on the stock markets, because of the greed, because of the power, because of the money, you won't find trailblazers. The trailblazers come from the young people, and they're the ones that take the risks. And this is why education is so important. And the irony is education is delivered by older people. Now, I've got a daughter who's a straight A student, and she wants to study chemistry. But I've told her there's no jobs in chemistry. They're closing chemistry departments down. But there are jobs in chemistry if you lead it to the linkage to the creation of new pharmaceuticals, to stop pandemics, to stop diseases. There are jobs in chemistry where we can go into renewable energy. And these courses, I'll be honest with you, these courses around the country, around the world, aren't really trailblazing. It's like moving a juggernaut on a Titanic. And what you've got to do, in my mind, is it's DIY. You do it yourself. You basically pick the little courses, the education, the webinar, and a lot of people create their own expertise. A friend of mine is an expert in horticulture called George Longmuir, and he stopped the raping of the peat bogs in Ireland because he created manufactured soils. But he went to get his technology working for ICI in the States, came back, became a horticulturalist, and radicalized the soil industry by manufacturing soil from green waste materials and not having to use natural materials. Innovation comes from risk takers, and it comes from people who decide to do something different, do it bolder, and in front of an institution that may not support them. And so that is my message to becoming a green entrepreneur.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will take two more questions. Muhammad Hanif, Muhammad, could you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
I think it's Muhammad Hafsat.
Yeah, I think so.
If I'm saying it correct.
Are you there, Muhammad?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm there. Thank you. Thank you, Professor. My name is Charles Bate. I'm a scholar from Wits University in South Africa. My question is on localization of international climate standards and the SDG in the local countries, where most especially Africans are much more affected. But my question is, how can we have an alternative of integrating the mineral production, which is labor, where we see a lot of exploitation of African resources in the name of climate crisis and climate change? How can Africa, especially those countries that are greatly having a lot of experiences with resource exploitations, how best can they be integrated and have an independence into the climate change international obligations, as well as protecting the labor and the means of productions? especially the workers themselves in the trade union movement. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, as we all say, like, I mean, definitely, this is one of the biggest challenges that, I mean, in most cases, the developing countries, what we generally read, like, I mean, as Rob was saying, like, I mean, the people who are teaching at different institutions are the elderly people. And like, when we read any book, like, I mean, I believe that, I mean, you all have read books. Like, when we read books, like, most of the books are being written by people from the Western world, like the developed countries. I'm not saying that, I mean, they are bad writers, or like, I mean, they are not giving us the right information, but everyone, every country, every citizen of a country has his or her own perspective. So what I always encourage my students to do, like, I mean, like, for example, if I just give the example of a country like Bangladesh, we are very poor in terms of scholarly articles. Like, I mean, if you want to do a research based on Bangladesh, like we have like Sundarbans, which is very rich in terms of ecology, but unfortunately we don't have much research being done on Sundarbans. So if someone who is coming from outside, or even someone who is working here and works on the environmental issues, he or she, the first challenge will face is that they have to base on books being published by people from the Western world who never have seen Sundarbans. Someone, like, for example, if I write a book on Sahara, or if I write a book on the Amazon, like, I mean, it might be a book, it might be a good book, but it may not be that relevant, that passionate if it was being written by someone who has seen the Sahara, who has seen the Amazon, who has seen the Nile. Like, I believe, like, I mean, I could make you to understand, like, I mean, so this influence, like, I mean, we need to start developing our own scholarship first, so that we can make people more aware from our own perspectives. And one more thing that I know, like, I mean, I very little touched on that issue, like how to enforce that. There was certain questions in the chat box which asked that, I mean, how we can enforce all these laws, like the global obligation, the local laws. We have lots of laws. So one thing that has been done in a few of the countries, like, the courts have played a very good role in terms of complying, or in terms of asking the governments to do that. Like, for example, in India, like, we have the National Green Tribunal. Like, this is a tribunal which is basically dealing with environmental issues, forest issues, river issues. So this tribunal, which has a very interesting composition, like I was saying, that environment is something which someone only with a legal background will not be able to understand. So because environment also has a scientific part, it has a chemical part, it has a psychological part. So in the National Green Tribunal benches, so the judges who are coming from a legal background, they are sitting with experts who have knowledge on forest issues, who have knowledge on other scientific matters. So this peculiar or interesting composition is allowing the National Green Tribunal to come up with judgments which are more relevant, more effective, and more implementable for protecting the environment. So maybe we can take the help of the courts, because the courts of the judiciary in most of the countries, we don't have a specialized environmental court. But if we can establish one such court, and if we can try and convince our respective governments so that they can establish a exclusive green bench or green court, maybe that will help us to enforce the existing laws or regulations, which might be helpful in terms of protecting the environment. Yeah, Asan, any other questions?
Thank you, Masrur. This will be the last question we are taking. I would like to ask Bulawala Lily. Could you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Sir, may I talk, Mashuk Ali? Are you listening me, sir?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Yeah,
I'm listening.
please go ahead.
Sir, I'm from Pakistan. In last season, the Pakistan faced flood and almost 75% of the land and the people disturbed with the flood. And you know, the contribution in the climate changes, anti-climate changes contribution of Pakistan have only 0.5%. And international level, the Pakistan not got any funds, any pledge in this regard. Is any organization that can bound the industrialized countries which are emitting carbons and other emitting species for the climate change, they must be bound to pay the countries which are going to suffer. Please, is any rule and law in the world? I want to know. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the question. Yeah, of course, like as I was mentioning, there are institutions like, but again, unfortunately, I'm being very critical on and honest on that point. Like the United Nations and its organs, like I mean, we don't have that much of a control on them. Like we means like the developing countries. So what we are lacking. So I'm just focusing on what we can do maybe, because we don't have, because like there are funds being created, but if you see like who are getting the funds, again, the Green Climate Fund or even the Clean Development Mechanism, there is one mechanism mentioned in the Kyoto Protocol. So most of the clean development mechanism industries were established either in China or in India. Why? Because every investor wants a place where his or her investment is safe. So they prefer China or India, and they have forgotten the African countries, or they have forgotten countries like Bangladesh or Pakistan. Bangladesh has only got 2 CDM projects. So this is where I think, I believe that countries from the African region and the countries from the Southeast or South Asia who are, I mean, vulnerable because of the changing climate, we may start forming some sort of collaboration, as I was discussing during my slide discussions, that I mean, this types of collaborative efforts between the similar type of countries, like I mean African countries who are not getting enough opportunities to participate in the global discussion, although they are the richest in terms of biodiversity and ecology. And countries like Bangladesh, countries like Nepal, countries like Sri Lanka, countries like Pakistan, we all should form maybe a different group under the umbrella of green leaders, maybe, so that we can work. But of course, there are lots of organizations like the Client Earth organization, there are like many other organizations, even the Agenda Foundation in Netherlands. Like, so there are thousands and hundreds of NGOs working, but I think what we lack is the intercontinent collaboration between the similar sort of countries. So these types of collaboration may bring a better result. And I believe like Edupro and people like Rob may help us to collaborate and like engage with each other to have a, I mean, an umbrella, an institution to be formed for protecting the environment and the climate.
Fantastic. And I think that sums it up. SDG 17. It's all about partnership. It's all about collaboration. We will not get this done. And it's the sum of the parts. If you're involved in fisheries, if you're involved in brick manufacture, I remember making, but in bricks, we used all the recyclates from the bricks to make horticultural products because it absorbed water, the brick, and we worked with a German company for rooftop gardens. There's a lot of innovation, there's a lot of partnerships, and I think the great thing that we've heard today from yourself is that the scope for us to make a contribution, no matter who you are, is there. It exists in our communities, in shaping policy, in working in corporations to become more sustainable as green entrepreneurs. Leadership is not at the top of the pyramid. it is equally at the bottom. It's the sort of Japanese philosophy of that's where the value added is. And the value add is the people that make the products, the people who provide the services. So it's not just the corporate leaders at the top of that pyramid. This was a really, really interesting, and I think the questions could go on and on and on. But the network that
Yes.
Edupro provides you, this Edupro network, is where we share best practice and we share ideas. So thank you for taking your time out, Masrur, and it's been very informative, not just from me. We're always learning. It's been informative for all our audience. So thank you. Well done.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rob, and thank you, Masrur. And I would like to request participants, if you have any question, you can ask us on LinkedIn, and we will share the questions to the speakers, and we will reply you. Thank you, everyone, for joining this webinar.